Crypto markets have been more explosive than the cantina menu at Taco Bell when it meets your stomach. We're talking about some serious volatility. There's one piece of information that I think is utterly important to digest, an observation that I've made this week that to me opens up the most important way to view the markets over the next few days and weeks. I believe that we've seen what we need to establish that not only is this bull market about to rip much, much higher, and that we are about to see some entries that we've been waiting for, but most importantly, we've seen a complete skeleton key, the absolute only way to look at this market in 2025, because there's been some seriously fishy business going on, and we're going to pull back the covers and take a look at it. Today, I'm going to be giving you my top coins for the next piece of the bull run and my plan for how I'm going to get the cash that I have on the sidelines into the market. That's right, before we get into this, obviously, I was expecting for things to come back down and give us more entries over the last few weeks into cryptocurrency, and there just simply hasn't been. It's been all gas, no brakes, leading right up to an announcement that we got within the last few hours. That is that we finally will have our first Chinese Buc-ee's location. Well, actually, I'm kidding. That would be a phenomenal outcome of the US-China trade deal. But in reality, what we got was a effective pause to the embargo, the trade embargo of multi-100% tariffs or whatever the heck the number had reached between the United States and China. China lowered their tariffs to 10%, America to 30% for 90 days. But what we really know is that we're effectively getting official news that this trade war is on its way to completely wrapping up. But if you look a little closer, it's my opinion that there were signs, very visible ones, that this was happening for the last few weeks. But given how back and forth the rhetoric out of the Trump administration had been, it was very hard to know when, if at all, we were going to reach a deal with China. Obviously on this channel, we've been expecting for Q2 to be effectively the time where this needs to all wrap up and we need to now proceed with the super cycle that we've all been promised. But one thing didn't sit right with me. Over the last few weeks, there was no real confirmation besides lip service out of the Trump administration that there was going to be a deal signed. The problem to me is that the official news seems to be way after the actual realities have been leaked. And this is where we get to this theory that was first popularized here by Spencer. Now, Spencer's obviously not a fan of Trump. He's one of the biggest Trump haters. But he said that the way risk assets are ripping relentlessly and gold is selling off, treasuries selling off, seems like big major participants, market participants, hedge funds, Wall Street executives, whom we know have gotten tipped off by the administration before, know what is coming. And that's because if you were just not paying attention to the news cycle at all, just totally ignoring it and looking at specifically altcoin charts, you could have seen the weakness in December, way before the trade war even got started. You could have seen some of our favorite altcoins, Pepe, Mog, Super, AI coins, you name it. They were falling through the floor like lead balloons, zero bid, zero support. And if you were just looking at the technicals of the chart, it was pretty clear that a storm was brewing. And you could have just made the decision to pull out and wait for calmer waters. Whereas over the last 2 to 3 weeks, we've seen almost an unabated, unapologetic, explosive ripper out of all of our favorite coins and then some. All of the hot coins from Q4 have gone on generational runs, and it's very clear based on the technicals and based on the charts that the bid is back. So this leads me to the belief that someone was tipped off, that the actual workings of this trade deal have not been done in a vacuum, and that big major market participants actually know things that we don't. Now, of course, this whole narrative that it's time for Main Street, it's time for the working man, this is all to screw over the investors because they've done so well, now we got to give Main Street their shot. Yeah, this is done, rest in peace, because not only is pivoting away from tariffs, which was supposed to be for Main Street, effectively giving up on that policy, but definitely tipping off Wall Street insiders is not congruent with giving everyone a fair shake here. But what we've seen here is that based on the new Republican-led spending bill, there's going to be a $4 trillion reduction in taxes, as well as $1.5 trillion in spending cuts over 10 years, which is $2.5 trillion added to the deficit. And so you take the $170 billion, which is the highest number of savings that we've seen claimed by Doge, and you add a $4 trillion tax bill to it. I mean, realistically, it's $2.5 trillion, but effectively, not only are we not cutting our expenses, but we're spending even more. So as they say, nothing stops this train. Bitcoin and crypto are about to resume their normal posturing in a climate where spending hasn't been cut, jobs have not been clearly onshored, their trade war hasn't really done anything but cause a massive amount of heartache and pain for everyone, certainly messed with my head, and now we have the entries being given to Wall Street hedge funds before we actually learn about the news. And so when we look at this Bitcoin chart, it really tells the story. You had this double bottom, and then you pretty much did not have market structure even break at all. You just had this grind up of price action without any kind of meaningful wicks below here, pretty much from 74K all the way up until here. The first time that we broke market structure and actually made a sort of significant deviation lower was right after this, which of course is exactly the moment when the Trump administration formally announced that there was going to be a trade deal with China. So we get this announcement here. We get a little peak above the range highs here around 105, just under 106K, and then immediately start selling off, which to me is a textbook buy the rumor, sell the news type of setup, where the rumor and the actual information about this trade deal was being leaked out way in advance of the actual reality hard details. And while that is crypto in a nutshell, it does bring up the point, which is if you had completely ignored the entire news cycle over the last few months, you would have been better off. You could have just sold the weakness on altcoins and bought back into the strength as soon as the altcoins started coming back with turbo bids. It wasn't hard to see, but it was so confusing given how bad the news cycle was as the market was ripping and how good the news cycle was as the market was dumping. The news really had me screwed up. That brings me to a few points of how I'm going to be adjusting my trading going forward based on the way that this Trump administration is working. There's a few key observations here. One, the Trump administration ties to corporate America are way stronger than he was pretending. Like, obviously, he's not going to screw over corporate America. This whole Trump that's going to sign the Bitcoin chart, sign the S&P 500 chart, sort of claim the gains of the stock market and really be that markets-driven guy. Yeah, that's the Trump that we have. And he's kind of giving up on this total reorganization of global trade. Two, a lot of the things that were troubling us about what could potentially derail this whole Bitcoin and crypto super cycle, those are being more or less removed from the reality. They're being removed from the equation. And we can see that the next 4 years will pretty much be a story, in my opinion, of Bitcoin adoption as a treasury asset and crypto being adopted and used for more and more serious things while the entire economy sort of swings around like a meme. We'll talk about the implications of that in just a minute. But even when it comes to other pieces of the policy like mass deportations, they're actually deporting less people than Biden administration's final year, obviously way less than Obama or Trump 1.0. So we're seeing a lot of the core policies here. And again, this is not a knock. The point of this isn't to talk about anything other than the price of cryptocurrency and how we're going to trade around it. But what's very clear is that the news cycle and the prices are pretty much divorced because the real buying and selling, the real action is happening right there on the charts, and you do not need this news cycle except to give you a little bit of confluence. When I'm looking at the news cycle, I'm going to start by looking at the charts. If there's weakness in the charts, I'm going to assume that there's some kind of weakness that we haven't heard about yet. There's strength in the charts. I'm going to assume that things are going well behind the scenes and that somebody somewhere knows something. Now, the good news here is that tariffs, which are more or less getting reduced to that 10% number, potentially less over time, are pretty much going to give Jerome Powell the green light he needs to cut rates. So we'll see loosening conditions. We've seen a lot of the most problematic policies that Trump was going to bring to the table, the most troubling ones for the markets, have sort of been chewed through, digested, and we can look forward to, in my opinion, a lot more stability and clarity where we get to see crypto continue to eat away at financial assets. While it's not the start that we had imagined, this is feeling like we're going to enter into that golden age of cryptocurrency. With that said, I've also been pretty objective with myself. I was losing my cool at the extremes of this price action because, quite frankly, I was totally overexposed. I had like 97% of my assets in the world riding around in cryptocurrency, and it was driving me insane. So even as I get cash back off the sidelines into this market, I'm probably just going to keep a little bit on the sidelines to keep myself being more objective because I care way more about getting it right, about doing my best work. And I realized that the emotion I was going through, that fear that I had from having so much exposure in the markets, drove me to make less than objective decisions. So I'm going to keep a little more cash on the sideline just to be more objective, just to see things as clearly as possible. With that said, let's get to the main event here. This has been one of the hardest trending market moves that I can even remember. It's honestly incredible. I mean, this is from 74K to 104K, a $30,000 move on Bitcoin without really taking a breath. Pretty incredible stuff. And as you can see, it broke through the April 2nd, the Liberation Day market structure level here at 87K roughly. And then we also broke through this bearish retest structure, this breakdown level at around 96K. Those are really, really big levels. We also have this level here at 90K or 91K about, which was the sort of weekly higher low that we actually broke through. That was when the downtrend really accelerated. So again, obviously every time I've asked the market for a dip, it has not obliged. So if you're holding and you're long, you're welcome. But this does feel a little bit different. Again, I'm not getting too aggressive here, but it does feel like the trade kind of played out of buying the lows and expecting to fix the problem he created with the whole trade war. And now we trade more or less back up to similar levels that Bitcoin was at. Again, now that that stimulus has worn off, what you want to see is that if Bitcoin does come down, which I do think is possible, if Bitcoin does come down, you want to see it hold and bounce off of some of these more significant levels here, whether it's this mid 90s thousands, whether it's this breakdown level from February, whether it's the 90,000s, or in my opinion, this is a pretty significant level that you got to hold, which is this Liberation Day, tariff day, that high that was created there that effectively once we broke back above, you could see it was just like gas to the upside. All right, I give up. It's time to capitulate on waiting for this dip, which probably means that it's going to come as soon as I do this. The reality is I would absolutely never forgive myself if I missed out with really any meaningful amount of dry powder on this next part of the bull run. That said, I am going to be keeping a little bit more cash on the sideline, as I'll talk about a little later on this video, just to stay more objective so I don't get emotional at the very extreme parts of the market. But this strength after the tariff stuff has resolved is undeniable. And it's very obvious that we're getting that last piece of the bull run. And so many coins are still, in my opinion, so cheap from where they will be going once Bitcoin dominance drops and this market rolls over. So I'm injecting about 40% of my dry powder, despite the fact that I'm expecting a dip here. Still, I'm injecting some dry powder here just so that I am not feeling totally sidelined, and I am welcoming the bull fully back into my heart. And you can expect degenerate EllioTrades as the mainstay of this channel. And with headlines like this, Coinbase getting added to the S&P 500 and rocketing up $60 in one day, this is an absolutely insane development. Incredible for crypto, incredible for Coinbase stockholders, and just good for the whole space. This is phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal. Just to be clear, I'm not a psycho here. If we break to new highs, if we just blast off and we just say, you know what, screw EllioTrades, we're not going to give them an entry, we're just going to keep pumping, and the market just decides to go for brand new all-time highs, I'm buying this. I'm buying a brand new break to all-time high. There's no question that I'm going to throw cash in once we get to that level. So that's my invalidation. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope I get better prices, but I'm no fool. If Bitcoin is making new highs and breaking into price discovery after all of the macro headwinds have been cleared, then I'm very excited that we will get that last moment of the bull run, the final party that we've been waiting for. Something that's pretty shocking is that throughout this entire period, this move from 73K or 74K all the way up to 100K, there's been zero new YouTube subscribers. This is across not just my channel, but every YouTube channel, courtesy of Enter the Cryptoverse. And as you can see here, there's been very few new Twitter followers. More or less, the social signals around crypto are ice cold. There is no retail mania. This isn't a retail-driven phenomenon. This is just the people who we're locked in here with. You know, you're locked in here with us, and apparently the institutions. But of course, at one point, there will be a change of pace. And I believe we may have started to see the beginning of that change of pace with something pretty important that happened this week. And that, my friends, is the return of ETH against Bitcoin. Now, of course, this kind of a move has happened before. It's not completely unprecedented, but I don't know, something in my loins, it just feels a little different. It feels like this is the type of behavior that leads into a more relaxed, more altcoin focused part of the bull run. And when you look at ETH USD, I mean, it's already broken back above this trend line, right? It had this trend line from, the rest of pretty much this entire cycle. It bottomed right off this low of 1400, and now it's way above a lot of the horizontals and even this diagonal support line. It's a monster move out of ETH. It pretty much doubled. That is an insane move out of Ethereum. And we're even seeing Google Trends for Ethereum misspelled, spiking, signaling, of course, retail investors. I mean, obviously institutions know how to spell it. So this kind of brings up one of those theories that we had, which is, of course, nobody really owns Bitcoin. We talk about owning Bitcoin, but people don't buy it because it's so expensive. You think, oh, $100,000. I don't want a little fraction, a little bit of dust of Bitcoin. I want to own a whole coin. And people feel like probably even since the entire last bull run, most people felt like Bitcoin was too expensive for them. So what did they buy? They bought two main coins that I think as they start to pump will really bring back that retail attention. We haven't talked about this in a while, but the first coin that they bought was Ethereum, because they were using ETH to buy NFTs. Remember, the meme coin run of last cycle was all NFT based, and you needed ETH to play. The second coin that they bought was Dogecoin. So as Bitcoin has ripped, the fact that Ethereum hasn't ripped and Dogecoin hasn't really ripped, those are the coins that the old retail class are probably holding. And as they start to come back to life, will probably signal a massive new wave of retail excitement. So again, I'm gonna go out here on a ledge and say, unless Bitcoin really shits the bed here and makes new lows, I think we've probably seen the lows for Ethereum. And then I'm excited to see if Ethereum can start really getting some momentum back. As you know, my biggest holdings I split evenly between Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, 20% each. And then I have a bunch of crypto stocks that tend to track pretty well with Bitcoin. But finally, that ETH bucket is starting to feel like it's a decent investment. Next up, we have Hyperliquid, which, at $24, again, it's up a lot. Obviously, if it comes back and it revisits this sort of $18 pivot point, that would be an amazing reentry. But probably, I don't know if it's going to give that, maybe $20. If you're not in Hyperliquid, that would probably be the next entry here. There's quite a bit of price support around this level here. But again, the buys that we made on Hyperliquid in the bad times, those aged pretty well, pretty happy about that. And more importantly, the product's great. Using the product is just phenomenal. One of the biggest coins that I sold, and this was because of the Libra rug and the Trump coin stuff, I sold Solana kind of frustratingly because I was so disheartened with the way that the meme coin ecosystem was behaving. And that was around $200 there or about. Solana is about 172. And so I definitely want to get back into Solana here with some of that cash. That was one of my biggest major holdings that I sold. And it's still below, significantly below, despite the ripper where I sold it. And so on this next higher low, I plan to re-enter Solana again. I do think that what I've seen is that the trenches, this sort of new meme coin game, is more or less still completely dead. And I think that's a beautiful and good thing. The longer it stays dead, the better it is for the ecosystem. And probably when it starts heating up again, that's probably a good signal that it might be time to start taking some profits. That's just my opinion, is that their hottest moments corresponded with effectively the times that you wanted to be selling everything. Now, without a doubt, some of the strongest coins from the bottom have actually been meme coins. You could say, okay, this is just a mean reversion bounce, whatever you want to call it. But I think when you actually couple together the fact that there's so many problems that we've kind of given up on solving with the Trump administration's pivot away from Doge. And again, I know the comments are going to say they're not pivoting away from Doge, but let's be honest. We were expecting Elon to come and slash $2 trillion. We were expecting to onshore some American manufacturing. Those policies haven't exactly really shown any progress. And of course, it's brand new. There's still time. But I think that people are still now getting comfortable again with this kind of meme-based economy. And so it's not surprising that people are now turning back into some of the hottest memes that had attention, mindshare, liquidity, and they are going absolutely bananas. So it would be irresponsible of me not to be real and just say, look, these are the coins that have been hotter than any other coin. You have Fartcoin going up 7 over 8x, right? 700%, right? 100% is a 2x. So 8x here from Fartcoin from the bottom. I mean, that is monstrous growth. If you put anything in here, you're up almost an order of magnitude. Obviously, as I've said, my top meme coin bucket, I put out a short on this, is Fartcoin, Mog. Mog has performed insanely well. The community there is just so impressive. Shout out to K-Money and those guys for just continually hacking away at it. They're up over 5x from the lows, and they've managed to get Gary Tan from Y Combinator, Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn, all of these big billionaires, including Elon Musk on his Gorkalon Musk whatever, to put the Pit Vipers on. It's really impressive, and I think it's the only true, real culty meme coin that I would really call that. Like, Mog has its own cult, and I think it's a really cool thing that they've done. And you can just see it on the charts. The markets love Mog. That's just the reality. So Mog, Fartcoin, Pepe, of course, this is the coin that's just totally defined the bull run, up about 3x. But what you can see here is that as soon as it broke out of this accumulation range, it had this accumulation range under the sort of 0.08. This whole range, as soon as it broke, it was just all gas, no brakes. I mean, this was pretty much one candle straight up. So you can see here, the bid on Pepe has not gone away. And then the final one that I like is Pengu. And what I love about Pengu, again, is that it's not really a meme coin. It is a meme coin in a certain sense, but it's really an IP coin, and it trades on the IP of the Pudgy Penguins business, which is a very real business, like a 9-figure business. And so this to me is like an IP coin. It sits in its own category, and it's done incredibly well. I think up 3 to 4x from the lows. Yeah, 5x from the lows at its peak. Absolutely rampaging. It launched at the worst time here at the end of December and pretty much just crashed. I think wherever we put in this next higher low is a great time to add to some of these hot running memes, because chances are they're going to continue to run. And finally, we actually even saw a whiff reject its sort of bear market area as well. And this was the big meme coin on Solana, which, as it got under that $1 mark, just really had trouble. But as soon as it got above the $1, it just exploded here. So I've been doing some really short-term trading, just trading these meme coin breakouts, because at least with whiff, it was just so easy. You could just see it make this little bounce here right on its massive support line. This was that daily wick low from back in August where it bounced off of that. And you can see as soon as it got through that, it exploded up 30%. So it's just really easy to put along as soon as it was, making its way above that, and boom, easy 30% gainer. But my point is this: as the market flips bullish again, we've seen the coins that have survived this insane washout. And what's crazy is it's mostly the coins that we already liked from December. We knew what the market liked, and now we are finally getting the conditions for the market to grow again. So again, as Bitcoin comes in and puts in this higher low, which I believe it's coming, those are the coins I'm going to be buying like crazy. And if Bitcoin somehow decides to blast off to new highs, I'm just going to ape in not all my cash, but a good chunk of my cash to buy that all-time high breakout. It's not the way I want it, but again, I'm not crazy. That's my invalidation. But I do think what we saw is effectively a preview of what's coming next. As far as AI, BitTensor, obviously we talked about this a lot on the dip, in these lower ranges, but BitTensor Tau has been just incredible. It played perfectly off of this sort of V bottom, and just look at this strength out of a coin that I actually think I was one of the first YouTubers to bring to you guys, which is TauBot. And TauBot effectively is one of the key pieces of infrastructure here for Tau. In my opinion, the best sort of beta coin to Tau. And from the bottom here, I think this might be the biggest gainer of them all. Yeah, or close. It's almost on the fart coin level here, which is almost 10x from the lows. So 9.7x from the lows. Absolutely monstrous gains. And it's still here sitting around 40 to 50 million market cap. So again, if Tau makes its way up above 10 to 20 billion as the number one AI coin, I think it's totally possible. Then the number one sort of beta play, TauBot, making its way to 5% of that, maybe 10% of that, is not a crazy thing to think. Again, that's moonshot targets. I'm not saying you should do that, but in my opinion, even though we've seen all this strength, TauBot is obviously one of the better low cap alts in the space. And just to be clear, with coins like TauBot that I've covered on this channel, etc., like that, I didn't rush to the exit. I didn't sell any of that. I was going to go down with the ship if that's the case. I only sold things that were big and liquid, like Solana, Immutable X, not little illiquid stuff. And so I'm still holding all of that exposure, and I am extremely excited by what I've seen out of some of these. Now, as far as other AI coins, AI16Z is an interesting one because this really caught that virtuals hype wave back in December, where it popped up in January to $2.3 billion, and it's sitting down almost 90% down here. So if we get another higher low, this could be a nice beta play because virtuals has been absolutely monstrous the way it's come back. I would also get some virtuals as well, but I like AI16Z as they tend to trade somewhat similarly, and it didn't get this massive hype wave off the bottom, but it still did, from 10 cents up to, what was this, about 40 cents. It did about a 4x from bottom to its recent peak. So it's not exactly dead here, but it hasn't gotten the full blow off. But this is where things actually get much more interesting. And to me, this coin, Hey Anon, is actually very exciting. And I do not have my position in Anon yet, but I'm about to get a big one. On the next dip, if we are so lucky to get a dip again, this is where I'm going to enter and big into Anon, because it's still down significantly, 70% or so from its highs of the mid $20. However, what this does is it's like ChatGPT for actually using the blockchain. So you're able to type in like, hey, can you bridge some coins from ETH to Solana and buy me this meme coin? Can you start a hedging strategy? Can you help me trade this this meme coin, this new freshly minted meme coin? It'll do buys and sells, give you an AI-based trading plan. And more importantly, you can actually use crypto just by chatting. And so there's two projects here that are focusing on that. It's Wayfinder Prompt and it's Hey Anon. And those are the two projects that I think are really solving what I see as one of the biggest issues in crypto. And let's just imagine, hey, if this gets popular, maybe, just maybe, this becomes people's front end, the way that they deal with crypto. And I think that's a really powerful application. So I'm very bullish on this as far as an expression of the crypto AI trade, which is using AI to make crypto far more usable. Now, it will become a crowded space, but these are the first movers. And I think that this is a really interesting spot. So Hey Anon to me is very interesting. Again, I don't have big exposure yet, but I'm planning to get some. Obviously, if it comes down here, it seems like the breakout area was when it got above that $6 range. So if I can get it at 6 or under, I'd be super happy with that. And that's going to be one of my big punts on AI. Also, undeniable strength here from Hash AI. They've had a bunch of huge updates as well, some cloud mining updates, and they just really rejected, this chart is definitely clearly rejecting that bearish case. And you can see they played off of similar supports. It went a little under, but they played off of similar supports from the summer of last year and September of last year. Again, very similar stuff with Neural. Remember, we first talked about Neural in the $1 range. It went all the way up to almost 17 bucks, came all the way down, and now it's kind of in this meaty area where there's a lot of price action. So good things out of Neural. Again, they are a crossover sort of between image gen as well as AI, and they're a BitTensor subnet. They have quite a few really nice things going on, but still holding all my Neural, riding hard for them. Again, they're doing well, rejecting their bear case as well. And of course, Vertical AI. Again, these are the ones that are super, super low cap that I'm excited for, but there's been a bunch of huge product updates on Vertical AI, which essentially just have vertically integrated different AI components where you can build and launch apps, do it all decentralized. Again, the AI trade is going to be one of the most hyped ones. And once the real FOMO starts kicking in, I believe mainstream normies are going to absolutely go crazy for AI crypto. Yes, they will trade meme coins. Yes, they will trade other assets, but I believe the AI trade will be the perfect sort of saturation for normies of, yes, AI is the hot thing. Oh, Nvidia is the #1 stock. Let me get AI cryptos. Things like Tau, Taobot, Vertical, like all of these AI tokens and a bunch of others, not just my list, but those are going to be the heat of the trade. And so that's why I'm very excited to see the market structure coming back, and AI tokens going bananas right after makes total sense. Again, one of the hardest hit projects that I actually really like is Super Champs, and they actually have some AI stuff that I think the market hasn't quite categorized yet. So to me, this will fit into the AI trade because they have some proprietary AI agent tech, and I just think the market hasn't realized that. And look, this thing is down to an 8 mil market cap, where that's way under the investor private sale cost basis. So I just think like at these low market caps, things like Super Champs, if and when the market does get super, super bullish again, which I do feel like that's what's happening, those are easy things to punt on. Now, my final pick here, which is a sleeper L1, is called Kita. This thing is up, gosh, it's up a lot over the last week. So you might want to wait for a second for it to cool off, but still compared to the L1 space at 173 million market caps, they're touting some incredible breakthrough level of TPS and tech. Again, that's not enough to substantiate. You need community and you need builders. But again, it's just wildly cheaper than other L1s, which makes it an interesting spot here. Again, I'm not going to jump in here, but if this thing comes down a little bit into the 30 cents range, that's a good time, in my opinion, to start hopping on this thing. In a full-blown bull run, L1s can get wild high valuations. And I expect for us to see that in the final act of the bull run. Now, I've said it and I've said it and I've said it again, but if you're holding Super, please stake it. Please do not miss the opportunity. There is something coming and I don't want you all to miss out. So please do that. We'll have more information very soon on it. But in the end, it's been pretty interesting to see Super and the gaming narrative in general, which has been more or less overlooked by the market because there hasn't been that froth yet. But in my opinion, when the normies come, when the true last leg of the bull run hits, when the socials for crypto start lighting up, things like gaming will always be natural fits because they simplify and make fun the crypto experience. And I believe that gaming will have its time in the light. And when it comes to gaming, I can only really be extremely blessed that Super has really been the standout gaming project as far as holding and growing regardless of market conditions and flipping a lot of the projects that were above it in the gaming niche. And I think that what you'll see out of the upcoming announcements is that the vision for where Super is going is incredibly durable and makes sense not just today, but as you look forward into the future of the way crypto gaming will unfold over the coming years and even decades. The real goal is to create an anti-fragile and useful protocol that extends way into the future. I retweeted here a tweet by K-Trap that says, Grok predicts crypto will capture 50% of the gaming industry by 2035, which could be as high as $500 billion. And in my opinion, gaming is in that trough of disillusionment where you will start continually growing and growing. The real winners, the real tough projects will continue to survive and start to really thrive in a way that grinds up over the next not just months, but what I hope is many, many years. So that's my outlook. I thought that was pretty interesting that AI is predicting that crypto gaming will start eating significant market share of gaming itself, which to me, again, would bode well for Superverse. So wrapping things up here, I'm going to be extremely objective, looking at charts and identifying where there is bid and strength and kind of tuning out the news cycle. Because if we had tuned out the news cycle to a large degree, you would have identified some pretty key pivots. I mean, it's good to use the news cycle as a support, like we identified this morning, how it looks like that last peak up and now weakness in the chart was coming after the formal announcement of a US-China trade deal. You can see the whole move up as kind of a buy the rumor, sell the news type event. Again, we haven't had the full breakdown here, but it's sort of feels like that, at least for now. So going forward, you show me the charts and I'll tell you the news. And again, news will be helpful, but the most important thing, the thing we can all rejoice about, is that we are finally going to get this last leg of the bull run. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure to click on this one popping up right now, and I'll see you very soon on the next video.